So, welcome to the webinar on COVID-19 containment in Germany and reopening of the schools over there. So, my name is Ravi Kiran. I'm going to be your moderator for today. I'm one of the co-founders of Tudubuddy UK Limited. So, the guest speakers we have today are Mr. Martin Richter, who is a virologist, CEO of Public Health and Pharma Consult from Berlin, Germany. And the next speaker in line we have today is Miss Katie Beatty, who is an international educational consultant on concept-based curriculum and instruction trainer. And she's also an author and school accreditor. I will give more briefing before they talk. So unfortunately, Miss Julia Kinder couldn't join us in the last minute because of personal reasons. Sorry that I'm going to miss her today here. So this webinar is basically brought to you in association with Epistomo International School based in Hyderabad, India, which is a Vikas Leadership School. And today we have 220 plus users. Some are on the Zoom call and some are on the YouTube live. In that, nearly 15% are parents and 35% are teachers, and rest of the portion is coming from the school management. So I hope it would be useful for them when the uncertainty is around the corner. And each speaker will roughly have 20 minutes plus, and then we will have 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A session towards the end. So any questions you have, please keep posting in the chat window. So we will move towards the end to those questions. And about Tudubuddy, Tudubuddy is a AI-based online platform to assess children from KG to year 8. We do conduct weekly championships to compete with their age group across the globe, which happens every Sunday. And this helps children and parents by identifying the learning gaps in the early stage. And Tudubuddy works with parents and school management in reaching to the children. So Tudubuddy has presence in UAE, India, and UK. So now I would like to brief about Miss Kate. She is an experienced independent educational consultant and innovative professional development leader and author of educational resources. With over 30 years of industry experience, Kate has held management positions in UK and Europe in international schools arena during her long career. In this sector, Kate has provided educational consultancy services, of course she's still providing, to schools and facilitates professional development training in groups for school leaders and educators on 21st century educational topics. And Kate also has honors degree in music and English from University of Wales, and she also has Master of Arts in Education Management from University of London. So the topic she's going to cover is about arrangements for remote learning from global perspective, assessing the students and supporting the well-being of students and teachers returning back to the school, planning for the new normal, and different scenarios for future lockdowns and lessons learned from the current COVID-19 pandemic. It's quite a rich topic, and I'm sure most of the participants are interested in it. So over to you, Kate.
Okay, so what wasn't mentioned there is I'm also parent of 4 children, but I have the immense fortune to have children of the ages of 22, 24, 27 and 28. So I have felt myself extremely fortunate for all of you out there who have had children at home during the last 4 months. So I'm going to speak to you about remote online learning, what happened, what's still happening. I'm going to talk about the reopening of schools in Germany. I want to say a few things to you about assessment, both internal and external assessment. And the future as well. And I am situated in the south of Germany. In fact, I live in the area where COVID appeared first. And it was interesting because in January I was traveling. I'm just trying to remember where I was. I was in Pakistan and I came home and I received a message because for many years I worked at the international school here in Munich, and the school had been closed for deep cleaning. And cleaning is something I'm going to mention to you. And we were told the school had been closed for a week for deep cleaning because there had been some issue with infection. We weren't told what that was. And then as we see the way things developed, there was a connection there. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the reopening of schools, because some schools have reopened already with very, very strict rules in place. And I have a list here for you. No sport at all. So students in the school, whatever the age, cannot do sport. I'm thinking about the implications for the playground, particularly with younger children and movement there. So social distancing outside in the playground as well as in the classroom. No music. So singing is banned completely. Classes of no more than 15 students. Social distancing at all times. And although there has been some relaxation of the wearing of masks when children sit at their desk, social distanced in the classroom, initially they were required at all times to wear masks. Then food for schools that provided canteens, cafeterias, very strict rules relating to food, and a lot of deep cleaning constantly going on in the schools, disinfectant as well. And then the very complex issue of who goes to school when. The public schools here have a system of 1 week at school and 1 week at home, which to me makes a lot of sense, because it means if there are family opportunities for sharing the care of children whilst the parents work, at least there is an organised system. Some schools have done a day or two in school, a day out. I can hear somebody. Can everybody turn their microphone off?
Yeah. Sorry, those who are not speaking, can you please mute yourself?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, the plan at the moment is going to be a week there and a week at home here. But I do know, because I deal with many international schools globally, that some are considering more complex arrangements of 1 week, Monday, Tuesday and Thursday at school, the next week, Wednesday and Friday, which from my perspective and thinking about a parental perspective is not ideal at all, because it's very difficult to create a routine. So I think that those are the main things. Also, no gatherings at all. So completely banned. And I mean, we saw globally our students who were reaching the end of their schooling, and over the last 10 years, shall we say, it's become more popular to have these ceremonies at different points in our students' education, all cancelled, and some interesting opportunities for virtual celebrations. So extremely strict rules in place. I've spoken to a lot of teachers globally in schools that have gone back. Issues really relate, I think, to the older students, from what I've been hearing, not wanting to social distance. And then there is the tricky issue of teachers. Certainly here in Germany, some teachers were considered to be in the risk group. I know I actually have one friend who was had a positive result after she had been in the school building, and everyone she had been in contact with had to stay at home for 14 days. So it's a very complex, complicated issue. Later, I'm going to talk a little bit about planning for the future. I know many schools that have made a number of different contingency plans for next year, from we're going to be able to go back in the unlikely event, to we're going to have to do this. We can have students in the school, but it's reduced numbers. So we've got a balance of home learning and school learning, age appropriate. And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. 2, we're not going to be there at all. And how are we going to plan for that? So these different plans. And considering that, schedules have been adapted as well. So, I mean, that's the situation we're at now. In this area, the schools in a limited way are operating. Of course, where there has been a cluster of cases, then in those places the school would shut for 14 days and reopen. But we, for the last few years here, have had much stricter rules in place, particularly for teachers, shall I say, in the case of pregnancies, the introduction of quarantine periods for teachers who have perhaps not got immunity to childhood diseases. And I have seen over the last 20 years, it's become much, much stricter. I mean, obviously this is on a new level, but the protection of students and teachers in the workplace. Then moving on to remote learning. So as we know, it first began in China. I first became aware of it because I travel extensively globally every year. I have many friends and colleagues working in China, and the schools were shut. And those schools, I mean, we have to consider, I was looking at the figures earlier, they say around 1.6 billion children have been sent home. So we're living in unprecedented times. Therefore, we have a connection here with affluence, with money. So schools that had in place already computer programs, online learning programs, were able to function much more effectively, much quicker. And I know some schools in China that they were able to move everything online. What they tried to do, some of them, is operate their schedule with synchronous teaching to all students with the teacher at home. You know, many of these teachers, and well-being is a theme that I really want to emphasize. Many of these teachers were under enormous stress. They've got their own children there. They're being asked to synchronously teach. And this was quite quickly decided that this was not necessarily going to be the way, and particularly with younger children. Schools I know that move to, with the younger children, with the primary age children, a connection each day between the teacher, the students, together for a short amount of time with a limited amount of home learning that the parents would be able to support, seemed to have a more successful result. Schools that expected too much of parents ended up with very distressed parent communities because there's, it's natural. Parents are not teachers, and then we have this extraordinary situation. Older students seem to have fared somewhat better, particularly those who have received their work online and have been on a schedule and have been able to adapt their responses to their own schedules. So schools that gave up on this synchronous schedule that they had been operating in class and adapted it and allowed flexibility, had a much more positive response from the parents and from the students. And I was talking to students yesterday from all over the globe, and they actually say that they really like the opportunity that this has offered them, because in some cases they've connected more closely with their teachers than in the classroom, because the teacher is either dealing with those who can't or won't, or those who want to connect, and they actually have had a much more positive experience, and the teachers say that as well. So there are lessons to be learnt there, definitely, about how we organise classrooms. I mean, if our students can very successfully operate in this way without sitting in a classroom with the teacher, providing all the knowledge to them and then responding, perhaps there are lessons relating to when we're back in school as to how classrooms more effectively could be organised. And that is really a lot of the work I do is connected with that. Then we saw an outpouring online amongst our educator community. And that, again, was unprecedented. I was just checking, there's a Facebook group called Global Educator Collective, and it has 126,000 members. And one of the issues that, because my work was stopped from the 2nd of March, so my globetrotting stopped, and I was here in Munich, in Germany, in the house, thinking about how we were going to adapt to this. And one of the issues that presented itself very quickly was that we needed resources online that teachers could easily and quickly access. That one of the problems they were having when they didn't have their textbooks and they were looking online was there was just so much there. I was part of a group that set up a website providing resources for international baccalaureate teachers. I mean, they're accessible to all teachers, but these initiatives were very helpful to teachers, because teachers and administrators became very stressed. So well-being is a message I have. Well-being of everybody, administrators, teachers, students, because students, their new normal was completely different to anything. And when you consider that here in Germany, it's a requirement that all students go to school. So students have never had the experience of being at home, often with parents who were experiencing a great deal of stress because they also had moved their work home, and everyone was in there together. So the importance of well-being. And then parents, because I know we have parents on this call. You know, parents, there's a lot of humour I've seen around parents having to actually care for their children, having to take part in their education. I don't envy any of you. I did 25 years of my own of trying to support my children at home. But of course, this was different because the work was coming from the school, and it had to be done in the home environment. So schools that were able to adapt quickly to this seem to have fared better. Many of the schools I deal with have students who have access to technology, and we mustn't forget that across the globe, having access to technology is not something that even, I don't know what the numbers are, but many thousands of students didn't have that access. And I did see students trying to access through their home, through their parents' phone, what their teachers had sent is another stress. So we have a lot of considerations. I want to say something about assessment because obviously we had across the globe students who were preparing for external exams, and Bavaria, where I live, the south of Germany, was one of the few places in the globe where the students came back to school to sit their final exams. The international exams, the Cambridge exams, most countries cancelled the exams, which has a huge effect on the students themselves. Obviously, they've been working towards this, and Plan B has been put in place. It's extremely stressful, and one of the messages I have is I think that we all need to put a lot of pressure on the organisations that are responsible for setting up the exams to make realistic contingency plans for the future. It mustn't happen again that they get cancelled. In the case of the organisation I work mostly with, the International Baccalaureate, they're cancelled, and teachers make the assessment of their students, something that concerns me because not all teachers are examiners. And although the students will have the opportunity to take the exams in the future, unless we have another complete lockdown, it's not a successful arrangement. So I think it's very important where external exams are concerned that arrangements are made. Now, when students have access to technology, there is the possibility of locked online places where they can take exams. As I understand it, that happened in Sweden, and it could happen elsewhere in the world as long as every student who is taking the exam can access that place. And I think with a time limit, a locked online place to take an exam could be an option that could be workable. Academic honesty, academic integrity across the globe, not just in India. Every country has issues now with academic integrity and students. It's the same everywhere. And I mean, that has to be considered, or a move to a continuous assessment model. There are examiners out there. I'm one of them. I didn't do any examining. So there would be the possibility of ongoing examining or standardization or moderation of teachers' assessments so that we have a final score that isn't in response to sitting an exam in a room somewhere. So that really for me is very urgent. And I've heard comments from the agencies, because of course they do need to work together, because universities need to be sure that there is consistency between the various agencies. But for me, that's very urgent. Something about internal assessment. I'm a member of a lot of Facebook groups. I've read lots of concerns from teachers, administrators, parents. For me, in the short term, that was not the most important issue. For me, it was something that in the longer term, if we're going to live with this situation, we need to think about how we assess students who are only in school part-time or learning at home. That's something for those of you who are parents. I think that perhaps you need to just ease up on the teachers a bit in this situation, that the most important thing is not the assessment, it's the actual teaching and learning your students are doing. Arrangements need to be put into place, and maybe that's something where your own children and you could talk more about their assessment of themselves, because we have a lot of issues to deal with here.
Sorry, Kate. I think since I'm the timekeeper, so a few more minutes, maybe a couple of minutes more.
A few more minutes, yeah. I just want to say about a few points about the future. Planning, I think, for adaptable schedules, not expecting to transfer everything to home. I think that it's very important to look at best practice, look at what has worked in different places. I mentioned the Global Educator Collective. There are online places where I just check their files. There are lots of examples of good practice. And I think really giving everyone a break. Everybody, it's overwhelmingly wonderful what everyone has done, but well-being is extremely important, and it is very stressful being in this new situation. And I'm sure I had many other points. Implications for teacher training in regard to technology. There are many online opportunities for collaboration with students that teachers who were not interested in technology had a steep learning curve here, but there are options there available to teachers and parents and students. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Really insightful on what is going on the ground, really. I mean, a lot of pointers to take. So, because Germany is one of the success stories which everybody could see that things are moving there. It's all back to normal a little bit. I don't say, as you said, it's a new normal anyway. Nobody knows what is that new normal is. So I mean, everybody's working hard towards that, every country. And I mean, looking at the numbers in India, I don't know if they have really saw the peak already, or there is a peak again, or it's very hard to say what is going to happen. So let's get into the questions time now. We only have like 5 to 6 minutes left. Only 3 minutes left. So I think there is a first question to you, Kate. How to maintain social distancing in the school when you have a big number?
Well, Germany is very good at rules. I mean, I remember when we first started wearing masks, there was a date that we had to wear them by. Martin mentioned that date, and everybody wore the mask and everybody social distanced. Therefore, there need to be very strict rules, and they have to be kept by everyone. And from what, our kids are very flexible. If we tell them to do things and they understand why, they will do them. So it's about the rules, really.
Yeah, I mean, people are very sensible in Germany, for example, so I think this is something, I mean, everybody should learn now in this context.
Understanding,
yeah. So Martin, there is a question really on the social distancing. What is really reasonable? In some countries they are saying 2 meters, and in the country where I live now, UK, now they reduced it to 1 meter. So what is really the right distance?
Yes, so as I said, as long as we are speaking about transmission via droplets, then a social distancing of 1 to 2 meters is sufficient if you don't wear a mask, that is. If now comes into the question also the possibility of aerosol transmission, and now it's a completely different picture, because aerosol transmission is just the bad guy in all of this. And the aerosol transmission in general, together with the droplets, just makes it basically a worst case scenario. We're just lucky that it's obviously not as deadly as of a disease as maybe Ebola is. Otherwise, you would be probably on our heels already. So, the distancing that makes sense here is what is proclaimed at this point. 1 meter, 2 meter. 1.5 meter is basically the main opinion when you have a droplet infection. You cannot take the aerosol transmission into account because that would lead you to a distance it's not doable, basically. So, however, if in addition to all of this, now you wear the community mask, which of course is not aerosol tight, but it retains droplets, regardless of what you use. If it's just a scarf, or it doesn't have to be a surgical mask or even an FFP2, 3, and we could do a whole topic on the PPE if you want, but I don't want to go too deep into this. So all those professional equipment is supposed to stay with the professionals because we're short on them. That's why we're having community masks in place. They're supposed to be worn. So the distances that are in place up to 2 meters is what you can go with. That's the most reasonable one, even though it will not protect you from aerosol transmission.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin. So I think there is one question I'm sure Kate has covered to some extent. Kate, the question is, are there any special measures to take for the well-being of the children during the COVID?
Oh, well, that I could spend the next hour talking about that.
Maybe a couple of lines,
I think it's really important not to be too harsh on them and not to expect what we expected before from them. But parents are reporting that this new normal has been wonderful for their family lives, that they have seen their children not so tired and taking up hobbies, cooking, doing things at home that they wouldn't normally do. So if this is an opportunity for family life and for just taking a bit more time, then I think that is very good for children's well-being.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I think what I can add one line from there is, as you said, a lot of families are also benefiting from this common time together. A lot of homes have picked up a program in the morning. Every morning in UK, a lot of people are switching towards a program called Jovix. He's online, and basically there is a session of physical fitness for half an hour. So those who want to try, try for it. Kate, there is a next question on the assessments. So what should the assessment be like for the remote learning from the school management perspective?
Yeah, that's it's a difficult question to answer. Shorter snapshots. You can't, if in your schools you expect students to take tests under time constraints where they learn and they regurgitate information, you can't expect that to happen at home, because that suggests that you are expecting the parents to be part of that assessment. So more assessments where they use their learning. So they've learned something and they have to use their learning to show their learning, will engage their minds in a more constructive way. So if you understand what I'm saying, so instead of just repeating what they've learned, you give them a problem where they have to use it and they've actually got to think about it. And in that way, the academic integrity issues are not going to happen in quite the same way.
Yeah, good. So basically the point is learn something and then apply somewhere so that, you really learn the concept rather than just learning for the purpose of learning. So I think we can just take one last question. We are a little past, sorry for that. So again, this is a question to you, Kate, I think. So what will happen to the students who are studying pre-primary classes? So where we give importance for, gross motor skills like hand and eye coordination kind of motor skills. How do we implement with social distancing in place?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and I have friends who are teaching very young children, and they are having great difficulty with it. Maybe this is an opportunity for more parent education as well, because it's something that I've thought over all of the years that I was a parent myself. I was a teacher, so I had an understanding of some of the issues that teachers face in school. So maybe this is an opportunity to offer sessions for parents where they are instructed in how to teach their children, because just expecting parents of young children to start teaching children, we will have this response. Which is, they're not teachers, they're parents, and that's why they send their children to school. That's why we have an education system. Otherwise, all children would be homeschooled.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So I think we are done with the session. I would really like to thank everybody who participated, and also I am pleased and honored to share the dais with you, Kate and Martin. thanks a lot for your time, valuable time here.
Welcome.
So,
Pleasure.
I hope there is a lot for the people who join from India to take it from here and then apply in their daily lives, be it the school management or teachers or parents. So I would really thank everyone who joined today here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So on this note, I'm ending the session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.